So you're feeling a little spicy. You want to go to a card show, maybe spend a little money, maybe make a little money. I got some tips for you that might help you out. We're gonna go over percentages. We're gonna go over apps that vendors and buyers/sellers use for singles and for slabs, two separate things. And then we're gonna go over some negotiation tactics as well. So all in all, I just wanna give some advice for people that are wanting to go sell some cards to vendors, people that wanna go buy some cards from vendors. I've been vending for a little over a year now. I've done, I think, 14 shows if I'm not mistaken. So I don't have the biggest track record, but I definitely have some experience in understanding as far as what vendors are expecting and what the customer is expecting. So I can kind of break that down for you and see if it helps you at your next show. So percentages. I'm gonna give you two criteria. One, what the vendor is expecting to buy and sell cards at, and then what you are expected to buy and sell cards at. Now, this is coming from two different points of view because I've been on both sides of the table. So let's go with vendors. There's two different values that they go by, whether you're just buying cards from them or whether you're willing to trade cards with them. If you're willing to trade for some of their cards, they will trade at a higher percentage. The range is anywhere between 75 to 85%. If you're just wanting to sell cards, they're taking on all of the risk, so they're only going to buy at a lower percentage than if they were going to trade. Then you're typically going to be anywhere between 65 to 75%. Now again, it varies. My range is about 70 to 75% if I'm buying cards. If I'm trading for cards and you're willing to pick up some of mine, I go to 80 to 85%. Now also, what the card is, or what the slab is, or what the sealed product is. If it's something that's very liquid or very sought after by other people or other collectors or clients that that vendor might have, then they're gonna give you a slightly higher percentage. If it's something that's a lot less valuable, that is something that they know is very unique or niche, or that they're gonna be holding on to for a long time, typically they're gonna give you less value. If you're looking to purchase cards from a vendor, vendors are typically selling around 100% value, maybe 102 or 103, maybe 105, maybe 97, maybe 95%. But it's typically going to be around that range with a 2 to 3% buffer zone, essentially. Later on, I'll get into negotiations and I'll talk about percentages that vendors are willing to accommodate to and what customers should be willing to accommodate to as well. But first, let's get into the apps that are used, because that will help us with the negotiations. Applications. Which ones to use and why to use them? The first main reason is that all vendors are using apps in order to price out their stuff, just the way it is. So if you want something to use in order to have negotiation possibilities, download one of these apps. So there's two different categories that I have these apps into. We're going to start with the first one, which is singles. When it comes to singles, the most common app used is TCG Player. They have been in the market forever. They have their own platform and marketplace that they buy, sell, and trade stuff on. When it comes to raw cards, it's the best mainly because it puts into play the condition of the card. Now, there are some other apps that can help as far as obtaining value on what the card is. It's not perfect, and not every vendor uses them, but depending on whether it's an older card, a vintage card, or a card that isn't bought or sold a lot on TCG Player, then these other apps will refer to with eBay, which eBay is one of the apps. You go to eBay last solds and you see what the value of that card is that's been selling, and then also you can use it to see what the lowest priced listing is for that card as well. It can give you a range as far as what the value is on that card. The other app that is used, which I will touch on as well in the other category, is Collector. Collector is new. It's been around for a little bit, but not very long, maybe a couple years, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It is very good because a lot of vendors use it in order to track what the value of the card is, what they bought it for, which you can't do on TCG Player, what they sold it for, which you can't do on TCG Player, and it keeps track record of all these transactions if you implement them and use the app the way you should, essentially. So a lot of vendors use this app, but it is not the most accurate when it comes to raw single cards or slabs either, but we'll get into that. But essentially with raw singles, stick to TCG Player. You'll be fine. But just keep in mind there are other apps that people use, and depending on the type of card it is, especially vintage, they may use eBay or Collector to help kind of get more data. Slabs are a different story. TCG Player doesn't recognize slabs. People don't buy and sell slabs on TCG Player typically. It does happen. I don't know how common and often it is, but I see them on there all the time. So I know it's not an uncommon thing, but it's definitely not the most common place to sell them on. Common. So the main app that people will use for slabs is a good question. I typically use Collector. Collector is just easier as far as just knowing what the rough value of what that slab is and using that to price my stuff. Now, when it comes to slabs, eBay is typically king. When eBay sells a card or when eBay lists a card, that's typically where vendors are going in order to find out what the value is. Collector does use eBay in order to get the value of their card, but it's not quite accurate. So I've used Collector for a little while now, and it's always a couple days behind. Some of the cards on their slabs, they are somewhat on time. It'll only be 1 day behind, but sometimes they're usually 2, even 3 or 4 days behind. So it's not the most recent data, and it doesn't get all of the sales. It gets most of them, but not all of them. So because of that, it is not as accurate as it should be. So a lot of people will just use eBay. eBay is going to be your best bet to get the most accurate form of value out of that card, almost. So I know eBay is the gold standard when it comes to the value of slabs, but eBay isn't always upfront with what the value of the card is or what it's sold for. So there's another app. It's called Alt. Alt is probably, I would say, right now at least, Alt is probably king in all of vendors when it comes to pricing slabs. I could be wrong. There's other apps I'll get into in a little bit, but that is typically what I see people use. That is typically what I use on top of Collector and eBay, and it's one of the more accurate apps because it will show you most, if not all, of the eBay previously sold listings, but it will show you what the price was if it was an auction or buy it now that eBay did not show you. Because eBay, if it has a line marked out on it or it said best offer accepted, I believe, there's a different price than what it says on there compared to what it was actually bought for. So Alt will show you that information. Now, again, I have checked both, I've used both, and sometimes Alt doesn't have all of the sales on there. It is more up to date, it stays more recent with sales, but it doesn't show everything as well. So it's this big combination of basically using all three, in my experience, is what I've seen. If I were you, the customer, and I was wanting to go and negotiate on slabs, I would essentially have all three. If not, at least have Alt and eBay or Collector and eBay, but I wouldn't use just Alt or just Collector. Have eBay there as a backup verification app, essentially. That's gonna be your best way of going about it. Now, some honorable mention apps that other people use as well. There's Rare Candy. It uses multiple marketplaces in order to pull its value as well. It has a scan option as well. The other one is price charting. Price charting, I would not use. No vendor likes it. Nobody really uses it as far as an accurate way to value what your cards or slabs are. It is used, I think, more in the sports area and other TCGs, but when it comes to Pokemon, nobody likes it. It just is the case. So if you use it already, I'm sorry. Everyone's just gonna roll their eyes whenever you say, well, price charting says this. They're not going to care. The last one is 130 point. Now 130 point is only used for slabs typically. It is kind of accurate if I'm not mistaken, but at the same time, I've had a lot of issues with it. At first I used it and it was fine, and now I think that they've updated things or done something. I don't know, it just is not the most usable app for me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't pull up anything. You have to be very specific, and you used to not have to be, so. But you'll see people using that sometimes as well. But again, I wouldn't worry about it. Negotiations. This is the fun part. So I have made up essentially a couple of sayings for this. So if you are buying, you need to aim a little low with room to grow. So start low, negotiate up to where the price is that maybe you would want to pay for that card. When it comes to selling a card to a vendor, aim a little high with room to fry. Yeah, I know, I made it up, whatever. But start high, and that way it gives yourself that buffer zone, that room to go down to maybe what you actually wanted for the card. Now, a lot of times you may not get what you wanted for the card, and it may be a little bit less. Sometimes you may get a little bit more than what you were expecting out of the card. So it just depends, but always go in with lower expectations. That way you're not disappointed, but give yourself that buffer room. Now, when it comes to wanting to buy cards, you have two different categories again. If you're buying the card outright, and if you're buying the card with a card that you're willing to trade for. So buying with cash and a trade. Buying with cash, you're gonna get more wiggle room when it comes to negotiations. As a vendor, we are now selling this card at whatever price it's going to sell at, and we don't have to take any more risk involved. When trading, we may be taking a small chunk of change for that card, but we're still taking on another risk that we're gonna have to turn around and try and do something with as well. So keep that in mind. If you're buying the card outright, you will have more wiggle room. If you are buying / trading an item, then you will typically have a little bit less wiggle room. When it comes to selling a card, the exact opposite. When you're selling a card to a vendor, typically you will have less wiggle room if you are just selling the card and the vendor is buying it with cash outright and there's no trading involved. When there's trading involved, you will typically have a little more wiggle room because you're taking on one of their risks as well as giving one of your own out. So keep that in mind. A little more wiggle room when you're trading if you're trying to sell a card, a little less wiggle room if you're just selling in order to make some money. Let's talk a few numbers before we get into the next subject. If we take trading out of the equation and we're just talking about buying and selling, if you are looking to buy cards off of a vendor, you're gonna be anywhere between 100% value of the card to 90% value of the card. You might get lucky and get 85% of the value of the card when it comes to you wanting to purchase the card from the vendor. When it comes to selling a card to a vendor, you're typically going to be selling it between 65 and 75%. Could be as low as 60%, could be as high as 90%, just depending on the card like I'd mentioned earlier. So that's your buying and selling ranges if there's no trading involved. Now, trading percentages. When it comes to trading, you will run into the benefit of your card value going up. Now, this is applied buying and selling, so it's across the same board. Your card, instead of being offered a 65 to 75% value of your card, you will be offered a 75 to 85% value of your card. You're going to get more value out of your stuff if you're willing to trade for it. So keep that in mind. If you're just wanting to sell, then sell. But also, if you want more value out of your cards and still are wanting to collect, or there's something that you're chasing after, it's worth it going down that route of trading because you're going to get more value out of your stuff. You made it to the end. I know it was a long journey, hopefully not too long, but I just wanted to go over a few key notes. Essentially, the main two aspects is don't expect to get more than 85% of the value of your stuff. Just don't. You might get lucky. You have some rare gem that someone wants, or some very liquid card that someone wants, or product, whatever it may be, and you're gonna get 90% for it. Great, no problem. Expect 85% or less value of what your cards are worth. The flip side to that is don't expect to purchase cards for less than 85% of what the value is worth. So with those two expectations in mind, you will have a great time. Just know what to expect as far as value for what you have, and also what not to accept as far as value from vendors that give you offers on these items, because you will get lowballed. It's just a guarantee. It is something that you will see vendors that are trying to get as little out of the card as possible in order to make as much money, which by all means, more power to them. But if you're trying to get the most value out of your items, you can set your limits to the guidelines that I gave you. One of the last things that I will tell you is have your apps ready. Download your items to your apps. Have them set. Have them ready to go. Have the prices marked down. Write them down if you have to. Just have your data ready so that you are prepared when you go into negotiations. At least having some sort of base knowledge, some sort of platform or foundation that you can start on, so that way when it gets into negotiating, you can get it done, you can get out of there, you can go to the next table, or you can go find the item that you're looking for. If things don't work out, they don't work out. Don't be upset if they don't work with a certain vendor. There's tons of vendors at these shows, hundreds usually. You can find that card somewhere else depending on what it is. You can usually find the percentages that you are wanting depending on the vendor. So explore, go have fun. If you enjoyed this video, if you like the content, I love giving advice. I'm not amazing at it, but it's just advice, so take it with a grain of salt. I've just had experience on both sides of the table, and if I can help other people, then I'd love to help, because I get a lot of customers that come to my table with no experience, no knowledge, and they have all these items that they don't know what to do with. And I have no problem explaining it to you, but definitely do some research beforehand. It helps. So if you liked it, please subscribe, please follow for more stuff. I will definitely make some more videos like this and come up with some other crazy ideas. See you guys.